Welcome into the official. We've got a great show for you this week, wrapping up the high school season. So, we've been giving you high school updates all throughout the season. Guys are going up, guys are kind of, trending up, tracking down. And now we've got pretty much the final update. Most players have gone through their high school seasons, including the playoffs with a handful, maybe still a few championship games hanging around. But for the most part, high school seasons are done. And we've got all the information from their season and how they did as a senior compared to junior and sophomore years and all the good things like that. We'll wrap it up with a nice little bro and give it to you for Christmas here on The Official. All right. Well, gentlemen, we've made it through the high school football season, and now we're going to talk about kind of the last word on that. It's been a long season. Our opinions, I feel like they've changed up, down, and around. The only real constant is the quarterbacks have pretty much stayed constant, at least at the top, and we will talk about some of those guys today. However, before we get started, got to give a shout out to HomeFieldApparel.com. That's kind of our partner for this show. Really great apparel for anything you want in the college sports space. Really doesn't have to be football. They've got merch from teams like St. Peter's and Colorado School of Mines, all the way up into your UGAs, your Alabamas, and RIP FSU Seminoles. We'll see if they come out with a special design for all that fun stuff that happened over the weekend. But HomeField Apparel, great kind of vintagey looking stuff. They work with the schools to get the motifs and kind of some of the traditional logos from back in the day. And it's just really unique stuff. Shirts, pants, hoodies, hats. Go check it out, homefieldapparel.com, and enter campus number 2 Canton as your promo code. You'll get, I think it's 15% off if it's your first purchase. And then also, of course, check out campuscanton.com, our parent website, where you can get $2.99 memberships. That's $2.99 per month at the low end. And we have all the way up with all the bells and whistles, tools, articles, Discord access, and all sorts of things to help you get better at college fantasy football at campuscanton.com. Okay, with that said, we've got some players to talk about, one of which was just recently celebrating his brother becoming the New York Jets starting quarterback again, and that's younger brother Isaac Wilson. David, we've talked about him a little bit throughout the course of the season, and I think the general feeling is like he's Zach Wilson all over again. But some of the numbers you've got here say that there could be a better version of his older brother. What are you thinking about his senior year and prospects going forward?
Yeah, I mean, well, statistically, he was better. His QBR this year was 137. If you compare it to the other Quarter Canyon quarterbacks, Devin Brown was 135. Jackson Dart was 147. And Zach Wilson was 107. I believe that was the first year with that coach. So the first year implementing that offense and everything. So I don't know. But I think ultimately his Devy upside is a little bit capped. He's only 5'11" from what I've seen. He's like 180 or so pounds. He is twitched up for sure. Has one of the stronger arms in the class. I believe his ball velocity is around 53 miles per hour, which is near the top of class. So that's surprising. But similar to his brother. He put up crazy numbers. I think I mentioned on a previous episode that he was actually on pace to break Devin Brown's state record for passing yards. He came up short, a few hundred yards short of that, but they won the state championship. They avenged their loss last year. They couldn't beat McKay Hillstead last year. I mean, he's just too good at football. So, they won the state championship last year, but it was good to see him win it all this year, and looks at least like a promising college player.
We love McKay Hillstead, by the way. Shout out, one of your 3-star guys, and ended up starting a few games this year for Utah State and looking pretty decent in the process. I think he got injured again towards the end of the season, but that was a great call out and acquitted himself. But this is not about the 2023 class. This is about the 2024 class. And Isaac Wilson headed to Utah. Matt, do you think he's a guy who can start early in his career at Utah? I mean, Cam Rising's coming back. You got to assume he's the starter in 2024. After that, Nate Johnson's gone. Barnett, I guess, might still be around. I don't really know 2 years out.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not a year one starter, as we could assume. Rising will be back next year, and he'll be the guy there. But, I mean, after that, I mean, I think if they showed this year their depth behind him is not that great. I think Wilson could potentially be a year two starter there. I mean, there's also a good chance they could bring a transfer too. Who knows? In the game today, but the year two starting upside is definitely there.
Yeah, and I kind of rewatched him a little bit today. There is a lot of shades of Zach Wilson. I mean, the way he plays, and Zach Wilson looked awesome on the highlights. You watch him; he looks great, even in college. And then I think it's like a processing thing in the NFL, maybe, or he just can't seem to get a handle on when to actually like throw the ball at the NFL level. I don't know if it's the speed of the game, whatever, which would probably still fall under processing. But Wilson has definitely got the tools similar to Zach, and who knows? Maybe he grew up watching Zach, and maybe he'll learn from what Zach did and end up being a better prospect. We shall see. But I think it's interesting, and his senior season was fantastic, like you said, David. All right, another guy who one of the constants this whole season. I think he finished wire to wire QB1 for you guys. And he's dropped a little bit for me, but still in the elite top tier. Is Dylan Raiola. Went over from Arizona to Buford, Georgia, increased his competition, and still put up a pretty good season that's really gotten better as the year has gone on. Matt, what's your takeaway from Raiola's senior season as he heads off to Georgia, where the depth chart, I guess Beck will start, but after that, they're having some attrition with transfers already.
Yeah, as we've covered weekly, I mean, Raiola had a bit of a slow start to the season, and then very quickly, guys adjusted to things. There's definitely a bit of a leap going from Arizona high school ball to Georgia. Playing the best teams in Georgia. He increased his yards per attempt from 8.8 to 11.3, which is something you love to see. Right. Only threw one interception all year, and it wasn't even his fault. Just bounced right off the wide receiver. So not a problem there. Still not really any rushing upside. That's just kind of his game. He's mobile enough in the pocket that I think he'll get away with it a bit, but don't expect him to be putting up big rushing performances on the ground. But I think he's the pretty clear heir apparent there at Georgia. I feel like they're kind of setting things up for him. I'd be very surprised if he wasn't the starter there once Beck leaves, but I mean, who knows? Transfer portal guys stepping up, but he's our QB1, or at least my QB1. I believe he is David still too, and he's got the upside for sure.
David, anything to add there? I mean, we've kind of talked about him kind of at length this whole season, but any last nuggets on Raiola? He'll finish your QB1, is that right?
Yeah, and I get the hesitation because it is a big outlier for the rushing thing. I don't know. Negative.
But CJ Stroud might prove us wrong here.
Well, yeah, I was right on the edge of that whole 10% theory thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, he was still my number 2 prospect, so I kind of overlooked all that. Like, take all these theories with a grain of salt, but being in the negative is definitely like, it makes me a little bit nervous. But yeah, like you said, like Matt had already said, like he moves pretty well in the pocket and he can improvise and stuff like that. And he's just a big, strong dude that can make throws with guys draped around him and stuff. Like, he'll probably, honestly, sack avoidance probably won't be his best thing. So, like the EPA boys, they're gonna keep tweeting about how he's probably gonna lose a bunch of EPA for sacks and stuff. Like, I imagine that'll happen. But yeah, I expect him to play. I don't know what's gonna go on with like Gunnar Stockton. I kind of like him coming out, but I can see Raiola just like kind of sliding in there in his second year.
You would think that would be the case. I also, the CJ Stroud thing is interesting, and I remember, even at Ohio State, Justin Fields didn't run that much, and in the NFL, he's been a big time runner, and I feel like Stroud's already been running more in the NFL than he did at Ohio State. So, maybe Ohio State's offense, we know it's not a huge running QB factory, but maybe they're like suppressing it even more, just the scheme, whatever, what the coaches are telling them. So, but even Stroud dating back to high school is not a runner. So it's kind of interesting. I feel like he has used that mobility a little bit more already in the NFL, making me look stupid for just fading the absolute hell out of him. All right, another guy who's in the elite tier, DJ Lagway, still committed to Florida. I think he will stay committed to Florida. I think that he will go burn this first year, and I think Napier's going to get fired at least after 2024 or mid-season. And then I think Lagway will probably transfer because multiple teams will come running. Right now, it's a little bit late. Everyone's got their QB and all that. But I think he'll probably transfer out. I just can't believe anybody wants to be at Florida right now. It is a disaster. But anyway, that's where he'll wind up for his freshman season, I think. And he had just an absolutely insane season. He improved everywhere. 58 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 16 running touchdowns, 1,000 yards on the ground, 4,600 in the air. What can you say about him? We've talked about him, just crazy tools, crazy upside, a little raw in some of his mechanics. We've said it all. Anything to add, or we can just move on to the next guy? All right. DJ Lagway, what has not been said about him? Julian Sayin, pretty actually like kind of modest stats, 24 touchdowns, only 1 pick, which is nice. Very good completion percentage. I think there's another guy we kind of know, or this is one of the only guys we know what we're going to get. We're going to get a accurate, pretty safe prospects who may not have NFL, like major NFL upside based on his like build and body or ball velocity. Is there any hidden upside there, Matt? I don't think you think there is with Sayin.
I mean, based on what he played this year, not really. I mean, he plays relatively conservative, definitely more of the game manager type. When we were at the Elite 11, we got to see him make a lot more fun throws, just trying the defender, just see what he can do. But when it comes to actual in-game play, you don't really get to quite see that. So I mean, it's there, but he's just not using it to a certain extent. But the physical tools, anyway, those definitely aren't there. I mean, his arm is fine, but it's not near the higher level of this class, at least. And his build, he's small, he's skinny, he's barely 6 foot. So it'll be tough for him in terms of his NFL chops, even going to Alabama. I mean, especially if Bryce Young does not pan out. I think coaches are naturally going to have this bias. We're like, oh, we're going to go for another guy who kind of has a similar profile, except Young has a way bigger arm. So it's definitely going to be tough there for him, I think. But again, they got nothing at quarterback. He could start there year 1. So who knows?
True. David, I think his upside really rests in the fact of how aggressive is he going to wind up being, and is his processing elite, which I think is hard to tell, honestly, at the high school level. Is that kind of what you take? If he's like a superhuman processor and anticipator and takes risky throws, I guess he could be pretty good. Otherwise, game manager might be where he winds up.
Yeah, I think probably a game manager. I think so. His ball velocity is 50 at 50. For comparison's sake, Bryce Young was at 55, I believe, in high school. I think he's been measured upwards of like around 60, which is crazy for a guy his size. But I would say Sayin's arm strength is right on the edge of where you want to be at this point, and he doesn't have like a big frame to like add a lot of weight and add a lot of muscle and add a lot of velocity. So I think his arm will always be like right on that fringe for NFL purposes. I think like he's situation dependent. I feel like after college, like get him in a Shanahan offense or whatever. Can he do what Brock Purdy's doing? I don't know. Sure.
I think anybody, right?
Yeah, basically, and he's more accurate than Purdy is, and so I mean, I'm not gonna say I don't know. He's not. I don't think he'll get drafted super high, but if he gets into the right spot, like well, I know we're thinking very far down the line here, but he could definitely have success. I feel like in the NFL.
Okay, yeah, and I think I'll probably need to drop him. He'll stay in the top tier, I think, just because he's pretty safe prospects, and that does mean something when we're trying to, project out really far. But I think he probably doesn't need to be where he's at right now for me. All right, so we got two guys that kind of didn't, increase or decrease their stock. I've talked about Walker White quite a bit. We all love the tools. But there is some questions about just being raw. I think he could be used in year one, depending on what they do in the transfer portal at Auburn. But like at the very least, I think like Tebow rushing type plays and kind of a package for Walker White, and maybe more from there, room to grow from there. He's a guy who can carry. He has playmaking capabilities. Auburn really needs that. So I think he's walking into a pretty interesting spot. Should get to see Walker White, I think, in some fashion. But remains to be seen if that arm and the ability to get the ball on time is, SEC caliber. I hope it is. I want it to be. The numbers are not where we want to see them, but there could be always context and caveats there. As well with the high school and what kind of plays they're running and things like that. And then Kromanoic, I'll just go him again, and then we'll get into some of the decliners. But another guy who's kind of the same, didn't necessarily get better. David, I think you have here that he had a lower QBR than Holden Geriner, who's at Auburn and did not really play much at all this year. Not that that means everything, but he wasn't as good as Griner in high school. So I think they went to the same high school. Is that why that was there?
Yeah.
So, I think he's another guy whose tools are very interesting, but hasn't quite been as elite production as some of these other guys who we like their tools. So it's kind of like you have to project production and tools, which is a little tougher. All right, Matt, I'll give you last word on Aon Nolan. He's been up and down for you. But I think recently recommitted to Ohio State. Didn't he? He went away and now he's recommitted?
No, unless that's news to me. I believe he's just been committed the entire time. But yeah, I mean, he had a real rough season. I mean, compared to last year where his team went undefeated, he won the state championship, they blew through the playoffs. This year didn't go quite like that. I mean, his numbers were down, completion percent down by 7%, threw more than twice as many picks on about 100 less attempts than last year. So it was just very sloppy play by him, especially for someone who we already feel like his ceiling is a bit more capped than other players, someone who's supposed to be like the safe, more conservative prospect. That's definitely not something you want to see, the regression like this. It's definitely very worrying. And at this point, I have my pretty strong doubts that he will be at least a long-term starter at Ohio State.
Yeah, you're right. He looks like he never decommitted. I think I saw something on social media that I must have kind of implied, oh, he must have decommitted and recommitted, but looks like he's been committed since April. David, perfect segue into you, a guy who is going to your Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And CJ Carr, again, not doing anything to really make us change our opinion. We've been fairly down on Carr, at least from a fantasy angle, I feel like the whole process. And so what is your kind of final comment here on CJ Carr and what he can be at Notre Dame?
Yeah, Notre Dame was never really an attractive spot for college production. But we have to talk about him just because he is ranked really high. So he kind of has like implied Devy upside. But so he had 9.2 yards per attempt this year, which is 45th percentile. It's all right. 3.1% interception rate, which is 25th percentile. He only had 91 yards rushing, and that was all against a 6.8 strength of schedule, which is 5th percentile. So I don't know. My comparison to it is like Kyle Allen or something like that. Like I don't really see like really good like physical attributes or anything, and like statistically he doesn't jump out to me. Tape wise, I don't know. He doesn't really jump out to me as like maybe he is like this like Alfred you always say like it's hard to judge processing at times. Like maybe he is some great processor and I'm just missing that part of it. But I don't know. I'm just not really interested, honestly.
Well, I think for a guy with that profile, and to be honest, an elite processor is an incredibly rare thing. I mean, I'm talking about like Brady. Tom Brady was probably maybe the best processor of all time. So it's rare. I mean, there's a handful in the entire world probably that can do it at a high level at the NFL level. So the chances of any of these guys would say if he's an elite processor, the chances of that is extremely low. It's just kind of providing context of what you're at least hoping for some of these guys to be, really relevant. Otherwise, they're just going to fall kind of by the wayside as an afterthought, at least for fantasy. So, all right, well, that kind of wraps up the QBs. Went over the Elite Three, the trio. We went over some other guys we've talked about a lot this year and kind of where they stand here at the end of the year. If you're listening or watching, you can assume the rest of the players are probably, there's nothing new. There's nothing to highlight. And if you've been following us all year, you probably know most of our opinions on those players. Moving on to running backs, and we'll maybe try to pick it up here, but two good guys. One at the very top that I'm really interested in, and he's been rising for me. He's now top 10 running back for me. And I watched him again today. Really like him. Jordan Lyle out of St. Thomas Aquinas, which is kind of a football factory down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Matt, where are you landing on Lyle? I wish he was a little bit bigger, but his stats are incredible this year, looking really good heading to Ohio State, I believe, as a duo.
Yeah, currently committed to Ohio State. Miami is apparently pushing hard for him, so he's definitely on flip watch at the moment. And yeah, as you said, the efficiency has been crazy. He had great efficiency last year too. I think he stepped up his bulk production a tiny bit more this year, which is what you want to see. He's teammates with Stacey Gage, who used to be a big time recruit. Now he's kind of fallen off the rankings a bit, but he's averaging over 4 yards per carry more than him. 11.1 yards per carry for the season against 36 SOS. Against some of the best competition in Florida. I think there's a ton to like there. If he sticks at Ohio State, I mean, their running back room just had a mass exodus. If Travion Henderson doesn't come back next year, you can honestly just rotate in. Although there are rumors Henderson might stay, so we'll see. Either way, I mean, the room is open now. Him and James Peoples will be coming in. Both of them are, relatively similar level of prospects. So exciting for both.
I think Lyle's listed at 190 on two sites, 180 on another site, and hopefully it's closer to 190. Hopefully by the time he gets on campus, it's maybe even flirting with 200. I think that we could get a little more excited if that happens. I like his movement. I like his movement and his center of gravity. I think he's a good running back. We'll just have to see because I don't know if he's an elite at anything, and if you're not even 200 pounds, that gets tough. All right, and I should have let Matt talk. When Quinton Johnson's been his guy, it's been kind of all both of y'all's guys. I've been a little more down on Quinton Martin. David, tell me about him. He had a big year through the air, it looks like, and that's something we're excited about with him.
Yeah, Quinton Martin was a guy I've actually been struggling with him quite a bit through this whole process. I don't know. He's a very good receiver. Very good receiver. He had 48 receptions, 733 yards, 11 touchdowns. 41% of his team's receiving yards.
Wow.
Like the rushing part of it is weird to me. Like I know they're in a lot of blowouts and stuff like that. Like he's not on a good team and he gets like 8 carries a game. It's sort of strange to me, but he had like 9.8 yards per carry or something like that. So he's pretty efficient. I don't know. His body type is just is a type that I struggle with personally. He's 6'1.5", kind of like a skinny lower half. Doesn't like break a lot of tackles and stuff like that, but like he can make guys miss for sure. there's like one guy he kind of reminds me of that was obviously a stud in the NFL, and it's like Matt Forte, and that's a guy I totally whiffed on back in the day. But if you watch him and like his Tulane tape, if you watch his Tulane tape back to back, they actually look like play style and everything else. It looks very similar. Um, and Matt got him at 21.5 miles per hour on his senior tape, so he's a guy that likely runs, probably sub 4.5 depending on how much weight he had. So he's interesting. I just struggle with his profile, his body type in general for running backs, but it's a good landing spot, I feel like, at Penn State.
Yeah, and I mean, he's listed as an athlete. I guess we're assuming it'll be running back, but maybe he'll just be like that weapon type guy who's receiver and running back. I mean, I don't know how they're gonna use him. Sometimes that is a problem if you don't have a good offensive coordinator. Who just signed on to be the Penn State OC? It is oh man, it was a good offense.
Yeah, good, right?
Who?
The guy from Kansas. I don't know.
Yeah, Kansas OC going to Penn State. They've had, obviously a very creative running game kind of scheme that's based off the run over there in Kansas. So that's kind of interesting. Then two guys who kind of didn't, we talked about them quite a bit, one more than the other. Taylor Tatum, a great season, averaged 7.7 per carry, 1,400 yards, 20 touchdowns, added in 6, 138-1 on the ground. Going to Oklahoma, where I think they've already had some attrition. It's looking like Gavin Sawchuk season in 2024, but I think there's room for people to come in. And if Tatum shows out, I think he could, definitely be a second RB2 there right away for the Sooners. And then David Eziomume, we've talked about him quite a bit. He made me look not quite as dumb as I did in the very beginning, with a nice bounce back season after starting very slow and then getting kind of injured. I think we've got a bunch of names here, but for the sake of time, Matt and David, I'll throw it to each one of you. Like, this class we know is rough on running backs. Even the top ranked guys in 24/7 and on 3, not really doing it for us on the production. Give me a few sentences on how you're going to approach running back in drafts, because we can list names, but they're all underachieving, and our listeners know who they are right now. So Matt, go first. What are you going to do? Are you just fading running back outside of this class pretty much?
I'm probably not touching running back at the first round for sure. Then depending on who's still on the board by the time I pick in the second, then I'll take whoever's the best is available. But and there's only a few guys I'd even consider taking in the second at this point. It's just dreadful, this class. And I feel like we've said it all at this point. Most of them are not very good.
Yeah, even high-ranked guys like Jarrett Gibson, Nathaniel Frazier, Keedron Young, Jordan Marshall, like they're just really, really bad efficiency this year, and that is a bad indicator of future. David, what are you doing with this class? I mean, there's just not a lot of running backs I'm excited about, period.
Yeah,
hope he pops, take one late, take a few late, and hope they pop, and we're well.
Basically, just try to avoid. And I don't really know, because there's so many of these dudes that are under, like, some of them under 6 yards per carries, a bunch of them under 7, like all of them under 8. It's just like there's like, I have a short list here. Brian Robinson averaged 6.2 in high school. Kenneth Walker 6.6. Joe Mixon 7.5. Tajay Spears 6.4. I mean, those are the guys that weren't necessarily all that good of runners in high school that have turned out to be all right. Well, especially Mixon, but I don't know. It's just it's very outliery to me, and none of these profiles look especially strong. So I'm just gonna try to avoid it.
I know. It's tough. I mean, efficiency is something I think that we all can agree is a really good indicator of the future, and it's rough out here on this running back class. All right, moving on to wide receiver, where we know that's where this class strength lies, wide receiver and tight end. Cameron Coleman, Matt, we were talking about him before we got on here. He has had a meteoric rise during the season, and he's now, I think, comfortably inside all of our top 10 receivers. the services may have him even higher, like top 3 type guy. What do you see in Cameron Coleman? And you can, bring up, I guess, his rise this season. He's just been a really big time, consistent riser all year.
Yeah, we were definitely hoping to see him step up from a statistical standpoint coming to this year, as he was teammates with Carmelo English last year, who, took away from some of the production. And he definitely did that. His yards per game went up from 45 yards to 102, and touchdowns from 6 to 17 for the total season, which great. He's going against some of the best competition in Alabama. And, he's got the physical profile, one of the better testers of wide receiver this year. He's got the frame. He's got the hands, some of the best ball skills in this class for sure. Not a route running savant, but I think he is slowly progressing. He's not, quite as raw as he was last year. But, he's definitely not a technician per se. I would say probably around average right now. But I definitely think there's good upside with him. Just flipped to Auburn, which I don't love the spot. Just because, Auburn. But, we'll see. He definitely has the NFL upside. Not really counting on him for any CFL production.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And in the Hugh Freeze offense, and we were talking off air, that is not really a lucrative spot for wide receiver production.
Yeah. His average wide receiver 1 since he's been a head coach is 13.5 fantasy points per game.
Okay. So not great for Hugh Freeze producing at least fantasy relevant college wide receivers. NFL relevant, but it could have just been a lucky little cluster of like big talent when he was at Ole Miss. We like Micah Hudson. We like Jeremiah Smith. They look great. Anything to add there? But I feel like we've talked about them and they look great. Nothing to beat a dead horse there. You mentioned Perry Thompson. And David, anything to add about Perry Thompson? I mean, joining Cam Coleman, joining Walker White, Auburn's put together quite a little, core of passing game prospects here with a quarterback and 2 pretty studly looking wide receivers. Thoughts on what that's going to look like over in Auburn?
Yeah, the receivers are probably just going to eat into each other an annoyingly amount, but what can you do? I mean, these are 2 guys I still feel good about, like their NFL prospects. So it's just like I can't really change their ranking very much, but I don't know. And like Perry Thompson, he didn't have like an amazing year either, but like his tape's pretty good, and he had a tough quarterback situation this season. He went from a senior quarterback to a sophomore quarterback. His raw stats are way down, but like his market share was actually improved. So like he's still a strong prospect, but yeah, I don't know. I think you just play the matchups on the college side most likely. I don't know. That's usually what I do anyway. Yeah. I don't know what you guys like. I'm only in one league and it's like a super deep league, and I'm generally just playing matchups anyway. I don't really have a like every week starter really, but
yeah, I mean, in a lot of my teams this year, it's actually harder than you think to find like a receiver who's gonna, you feel really good about 100 yards. I was starting guys like Rome Odunze every week, but after that, yeah, it was kind of like, depending on your league setup, but a lot of times like you find G5 guys who are going up against, Mercer or some crap like that. And so, yeah, but sometimes you find a real, jackpot like this year, Rome Odunze and Jalen McMillan last year, both of them were like incredible all year long. Interesting that Auburn's got 2 top 10 receivers. Bama does not have a big time receiver at all, which I feel like we haven't talked about because we don't really talk about the classes as a whole very much, but their top ranked receiver on 24/7 is number 26, Amari Jefferson, who we have brought up, I think, but kind of wild that Alabama is not bringing in any top receivers at all. I know they have 2 of the top guys in 2025 already.
There's a good chance Ryan Williams is about to flip to 2024 too. So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
We don't know for sure, but he's been hinting at it. So
that's very interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, that could mean he'd probably be top 10 in this class. I mean, we talked about him. I liked him quite a bit. I think you guys were a little less enthusiastic, if I remember, when we talked about the 2025.
He's a tier 1 guy.
Okay. All right, so that would be good for Alabama. And then we've got Bryant Wesco, Cam Williams. Wesco, we've talked about. He is what he is. He's a nice high floor, I think, guy going to Clemson. Cam Williams, nothing new, going to Notre Dame, right, David?
Yeah, Cam Williams going to Notre Dame.
Uh,
Depth
yeah, and
chart's looking rough
I
over there.
think we haven't talked about him too much. I mean, you can chime in now.
Oh, I think he's really athletic. I think he's like 95th percentile or something crazy. Like he hits 22 and all that stuff. It's he's not super refined. I feel like.
This is Jeff.
Yeah, so it's just like that's not my brand anymore. Like just give me a route runner, give me a freaking just give me some first down, give me a possession receiver. I don't care. These fancy, these flashy guys, I don't want them. But he plays terrible competition, honestly. Like his SOS was like -20 last year. I think it was improved to like -10 this year. So but the depth chart is so bad, and he might just play at the very least like special teams. I could totally see him being like a kick returner.
Yeah.
Like that. But like long term, I just feel like there's something with receivers in general. I feel like if they haven't quite figured out route running even by college, I'm just like kind of skeptical that it's gonna happen. I don't know.
No, I think it's something we're workshopping, and I think it's so far paid decent dividends to fade some of these athletic freaks that really are super raw. And then, man, we got a lot of guys. Ryan Wingo, we've talked about him a whole lot. We think he's raw, another freaky athlete. Mike Matthews, I feel like we've never one episode, I think we all got excited. I know I did, and then he's just kind of trickled back down. Like we're not enthusiastic about him. Mylan Graham, that's a tough one because I did like him quite a bit, but man, just not a lot of big plays this year. These guys are market share. These guys, all market shares have gone down. Mike Matthew, 49 to 38%. Ryan Wingo, 35 to 28%. Mylan Graham, 65 to 42%. Draylon Miller, a guy I really like, 49 to 35%. And his teammate kind of matched him. So we don't like that, right? We don't want to see the market share go down as a senior, for crying out loud.
No, I especially think the notable big one for me here at least is Ryan Wingo. I mean, the services still have him, as a pretty consensus top 10 guy. Second on his team in receiving yards this year, only 12 yards per catch. Got a bunch of carries, only 6 yards per carry. Like, what can he do? Like, he's raw. He's not making big plays. Like, I just don't understand it. He runs a 10-600 meter and he's over 200 pounds. That's all he's got.
That's great, but I mean, honestly, for receivers, the athleticism just doesn't really do it for me. It's more of a running back thing, I think, in terms of providing value or like insulating value.
And he wasn't a good running back either. So
there you go. All right, David, your guy, front of the list here at the tight end position. He's been a riser, I know, at least for you. Christian Benn with receiver-like numbers. I mean, this is insane. Talk to us about this. The touchdowns are incredible. His season that he had as a tight end.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned like throughout the year here that like I'm like, I don't know, guys, like his production's like pretty crazy. And I just finally came across his final year stats just the other day, and he had in 9 games he had 94 receptions, so more than 10 per game, 1,423 yards, which is like over 150, and 22 TDs. So over 2 per game. So yeah, the competition's not great. But regardless, like this is kind of like what I prefer to see if I have to, like, if I'm thinking about, and he has like a really, he's like 6'5", 240. Like this is the type of guy, the type of size that we want. We don't have to worry about him like having to put on 30 pounds and stuff. But feels pretty safe to me. What's his face? I think I mentioned Tom Lemming just actually tweeted this out, and he says he runs a 4.56. I don't know if he's quite that fast. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what to trust, but I think he's a pretty good athlete. I think he's a pretty solid all around, and I think he's risen for all his services. Not super high, but I think he's in most top 100 now.
Yeah, I mean, and those are that's insane numbers for 9 games at the tight end position. Like that's absolutely bonkers. And you've been beating the drum all season. You've been telling us, hey, this guy Benn is really putting up numbers. When you look at the final line, that's just crazy. Matt, Jaden Riddell, going to Georgia, athletic freak. We've talked about him a while. Any concerns with his, kind of lackluster senior year, or is the context, kind of excuse some of it?
I mean, I'm definitely concerned compared to where I had him at this time, or not this time last year, but where I had him earlier at the beginning of the class. He's definitely for me a good bit. Still my tight end one, but not by a huge margin anymore. He had pretty terrible quarterback play, so you can kind of excuse him there. We think he was injured for a little bit too. When he came back, he finally had a pretty big, I think, 150-yard game or something like that. So I don't know. It's weird. He'll always be a high upside guy, low floor. So it's definitely a gamble, and I'm still willing to take at this point.
Right. Well, and I'm okay with tight ends being high ceiling and low floor because I feel like they're all low floor. 2 for 20 yards is the floor you're going to get. And then Landon Thomas, just kind of a downward trend all season. Really has not improved on anything over the last 3 years, kind of just a flat production. So that's a little concerning. I think he's committed to FSU, right? Yeah. So they use their tight ends quite a bit. So that could be interesting. And, they'll get a real quarterback in there that's not Brock Glenn soon, or freshman Brock Glenn. Maybe he'll even develop. But right now he looked pretty weak in that Louisville game. All right, guys. Well, that does it for the high school recap show. Great season, great year. Thank you so much for all your work you've done compiling these stats, getting us videos every week. When we do this, it's, this show is just totally you guys. I just come out here and talk a little bit, but just great stuff all year. For all the listeners, next week, we're going to have a big show, a big mock. We're going to have at least one special guest, maybe two. We're going to do a nice mock to finish the season. Then we're going to have early signing day week. We're going to take a break for Christmas, just FYI, and then we'll be back in January. So that's what you can look forward to coming up in the next little bit here in December. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure as always. And this has been The Official.